we documented the entire experience in a podcast that I made called Zigzag, and part of what we tried to do was explain to people, like, what the hell is blockchain? And so we thought a song would help, and so I'd like to just play a quick clip, if that's okay. Can we play the clip? It's 3 things you need to know about blockchain. Here we go. Number 1, something you need to know about blockchain. Blockchain is related to something you probably have heard of, Bitcoin.
Bitcoin is blockchain's baby. Bitcoin is blockchain's baby.
Right, cool, okay, good. So, got number 1, ready for number 2. Blockchain is a new way for humans to make deals.
Transactions, trading, taking care of business on the blockchain.
Right, yeah, I like that. Okay, and number 3, blockchain requires a collective spirit. Think lots of people and computers all working together.
All my friends are computers and we're working together on the blockchain.
Excellent. So, extremely simplistic definition. But catchy. I still have people who see me and start singing it to me. What do you want to add to that, Gavin? Hey, we got to start somewhere, because it is really confusing. Talk to people. The necklace of computers is how I like to think of it. Does that speak true to you in any way?
Okay, yeah, I mean, there's nothing particularly wrong in the words of that song, so definitely a good starting point.
Journalistically sound.
Yeah, I mean, it's as a technologist, someone who's implemented quite a few blockchains now. It's very easy to get into the technical details, and I think that's probably not going to be super useful. But we can think of it in another way as basically digital service provision without the service provider, right? So when we go to use Facebook or Google search or whatever, we're actually going to an organization that is owned by a person. Usually it's run by like a CEO, and there's a bunch of shareholders that make the decisions. And we're wanting to access their services, and they're providing those services back to us. But crucially, there's always this service provider involved, right? And that service provider has absolute control. So if we imagine like the internet as kind of a big country, and this country is actually like run by a bunch of dictators, each with their own kind of sort of plot of land, almost like feudalism. The reality is that we need to move beyond this very feudalistic system, because as we found out in the past, it's not the greatest for innovation. It's not the greatest for the lives of the population, and it's generally a bit useless.
But you did start out with Bitcoin, which I do think we've seen as the best use case scenario to begin with, right? And you also talked about Silk Road, and essentially we know the dark money and a lot of criminals and those sorts of things, like this idea of a place where no one's in charge because they can create transactions, monetary transactions, without anybody, in theory, being able to trace it back to them. But back to Vitalik. You and him and a bunch of other guys decided, well, actually, let's create a blockchain that does more than just exchange a currency, right? And that is Ethereum. Is it okay if I play one more clip to explain Ethereum? He's reluctant. I'm going to do it anyway. Can we play the next clip, which is about Ethereum?
Ethereum.
Yes, Ethereum. Ethereum is a kind of blockchain software, a protocol. And this is really important. Anyone can use Ethereum to build apps on the blockchain. Blockchain apps. Like, think of it as the iPhone in apps. Apple lets developers use their iPhone software to make all kinds of apps. Anyone can use Ethereum software to build blockchain apps, except they call them D-apps. I thought they were called dApps, but they're not. They're D-apps because they are decentralized.
Decentralized.
Okay, I think we got it. Thank you. That's enough. Technically sound? Like, come on. Mostly right, though, right? Okay, so this idea of using blockchain to do different kinds of transactions, that's what Ethereum's big promise was. There also is ETH, of course, which is the cryptocurrency that's attached to it, I suppose is the best way to put it.
Correct.
But you have created now another blockchain, as it were, Polkadot.
Yeah.
Tell us why you decided to do that and how you see that being used in new and different ways.
Yeah, okay. Well, Polkadot came about as a desire to radically iterate upon what I'd built before. So yeah, you know, at the time, of course, we knew that the Ethereum that we built was not going to be the final blockchain. But you know, it's great to prototype things. It's great to deliver an MVP as fast as you can. But after a couple of years of Ethereum, it became clear what was missing. Like one of the things was missing was, actually it's what Frank was talking about a lot earlier, governance. There needs to be clear governance. And we have this great tool for forming consensus amongst, you know, the crowd of people who use it, the crowd of stakeholders. But what we haven't really done with blockchain is explore how the blockchain, the decisions that a blockchain needs to make outside of its direct application. One of these decisions is how the blockchain should evolve its technology, whether it should fix certain bugs. Now these are decisions that are like, for example, bailouts or rescues. These are things that you can't program into a blockchain on day one. They're decisions that have to be made as and when you come to need to make them. And so this is something that we built into Polkadot from scratch.
So you're saying that, like, when you say fixing a bug, you're saying you can program the code to say, like, if there's a disaster, here's the plan.
We can program the code, like, it's very difficult to define a disaster before it happens.
Yes.
But
as we all know.
But what we can do is we can say, well, if enough people believe that this is a disaster, according to our metric of governance, so maybe it's voting, maybe it's like people that have locked themselves into the system long-term get a bigger voice than those who are just short-term in the system. There are all sorts of ways how we can like create these very agile governance apparatus, but we need to think about this, and we need to think about this, we need to build it in from the beginning. It's not something that you can retrofit, because of course, if there is no way of making a decision to upgrade to governance in the first place, then how do you decide to actually retrofit it?
So the project that I was part of tried to have governance as well. There were humans. Vivian was the head of the humans who would actually make decisions. That was the idea. There was also a token system where regular people could, in theory, have their say, depending on that. Can you talk about some of the examples? Like you said, it's great to prototype. So how are you using any of the blockchains that you're part of to actually do things on the ground? Are there real life examples that you can give us?
Yeah, sure. So one of our earlier projects was we worked with one of the agencies of the United Nations to deploy a kind of food voucher scheme for people who have been sort of, you know, the victims of the various global upheavals that we've seen. In this case, it was refugees who were in the camps in Jordan. And using the blockchain technology that we'd built, we were able to really help together with, you know, some of the means of optical identification. We were able to get food to the people who actually needed the food in a super low cost, super low margin fashion.
And that was using mobile technology, like mobile phones, essentially?
Yeah, I mean, basically it was like QR codes, so paper tokens, and in addition to like mobile phones, some like optical recognition, so it's like retina, iris scanning, that's right, and in addition to that, blockchain.
Okay, so it's ironic to me that, like, in a trustless idea that we're talking about, you gotta have a lot of trust if you're handing over, like, the iris scan, like, to somebody, right? Like, the privacy implications are pretty huge in a project like that. We'll set that aside for now, because we only have 6 minutes and 30 seconds left. But the project that I was part of, Civil, failed very dramatically. And a lot of journalists were pretty gleeful about it. Many of you are here in the audience, actually. And there's a lot of skepticism out there about technological solutionism, that, you know, tech's problems got to be solved with tech, that techies love to say that because it keeps them in a job and actually makes them a lot of money. How do you assuage the critics' sitting in front of you?
Well, you know, I think I wonder if I really need to make the argument that, you know, the world was not a better place to live in the 1600s, right? Technology has, broadly speaking, made long-term the world a better place for most people to live. People don't, you know, generally die in their mid-30s of preventable disease anymore. But yeah, for sure, the problem that I see it with technology in general, it does tend to be a power concentrator, right? The reason that technology tends to happen is because people in power want to consolidate their power further. So they pay for technological development. It's very easy to see examples of this. Look at Facebook. It pays for innovation into AI in order to sell more adverts, make more money in that direction, but they sell more adverts and make more money if this AI causes a greater amount of divisiveness in society. And, you know, there are academic studies demonstrating this. And that's a very unfortunate side effect of technological development. And I think occasionally you need overhauls, like there needs to be pushback, but it does, I agree with Frank, it does need to be a pushback technologically. There is no arguing with technology. There is no arguing, generally speaking, with systemic or structural power. So you need to create a kind of a means of diffusing that power. And blockchain, the funny thing is, one of the sort of first eureka moments that I had way back in 2014 was that blockchain is one of these very, very few technologies, I can't really name very many others at all, that directly serves to dilute power. And that's a very strange thing to want to do, but yet I think the world has gotten to the place where there is so much concentration of power in what I would call trust structures, basically institutions and corporations that operate based upon a widespread trust that they act in their clients' and consumers' favor, when in fact a lot of the time they really don't. The society has so many of these trust structures that we're finally getting tired of using them. See the Snowden revelations that led me to sort of put forward the concept of Web3 back in 2014, and the 2008 banking crisis as two clear examples of that.
I'm totally on board with that, but my sort of conclusion was, when the project failed, was like, whoa, it is so early in this technology. The idea of deploying it to the point that the average consumer could actually take part. I mean, I dedicated an entire episode to explaining what a wallet was, a crypto wallet, and how you work it. And like, I just don't know. Are we at a place where we actually think that we will be able to build potentially a new way of transacting digitally in our lifetime?
Well, one of my goals with Polkadot is to remove the need for the mainstream adopters to use crypto at all. And this is something that's dramatically different between Polkadot and the smart contract model that we saw that was introduced with Ethereum. Fees for Ethereum have to be paid by the users, and this means that users need to hold Ether. It means they have to have an Ether wallet. And this is like almost like requiring you to pay for your slice of Google's electricity bill when you use their search facility. This simply wouldn't work in reality. So I think that platforms, smart contract platforms like Ethereum, are going to have a hard time reaching that real mainstream adoption, that sort of billions of users adoption. And it's not simply because of the scalability problem, but it's also because users have to hold Ether. They have to hold this crypto. So with Polkadot, the applications buy almost like a job lot of consensus bandwidth. They buy like a job lot of transactions for their users, and then they, as their applications, in the same way that like Facebook and Google and Twitter kind of decide who and when they allow to use their services, these applications would do the same thing without the need of those users necessarily paying any kind of tokens or even being exposed to the concept of cryptocurrency.
Okay, that actually made sense to me. So yay, the last 3 years weren't a total waste. I don't know if it made sense to any of you, but you have to get people to be willing to try. They have to be putting in the time. And right now, there's a big PR issue when it comes to blockchain. And of course, it's climate change, right? Mm-hmm. Can you in a very basic way,
Uh-huh.
explain the difference, how there is an attempt to use these different blockchains, the ones that aren't like Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, from proof of work to proof of stake. Basically, changing what needs to be done for the blockchain to continue to function and make transactions.
Sure. So, very
No,
quickly.
you've got 45
I
seconds.
got 45 seconds. The way that Bitcoin and Ethereum work, the way that they allow for this service provision without service providers, is by having the people, the operators of these computers, to prove that they are worthy of progressing the network along and processing transactions. This proof is called a proof of work, also known. I actually introduced this term. I will have you know.
Claim it.
Proof of waste, right? They are proving that they are wasting energy to do this. Now, that's a really dumb idea, right? It's like the fossil fuels of blockchain. And if anyone tells you, oh, well, look, it's okay because we'll build like green power plants for this wasted energy, that's really dumb. What we do with Polkadot and what we do with some of the other blockchains is we make sure that we use a super efficient way of generating consensus, where we don't waste real resources, but we just tie up virtual resources, resources that don't really exist and therefore don't really matter if their opportunity is wasted for a while.
Okay, we need another session for that one, clearly, but I think we're getting there. We're getting there. I really hope that this helped you grasp onto the technology a little bit more as we go into the afternoon and feel empowered, because I do think that's the right word, to ask the right questions of the people who want to build this new future. Thank you so much for having me. Gavin, you're the best. Thank you for being here.
Manoush.
Thanks so much.